Alrighty, welcome to the Excitable Soul podcast, everybody. Here we're interested in all things purpose. We want to know where and how people find meaning and connection in their lives. In every episode, we will be hearing the real life stories of how people have uncovered, understood, and unleashed their own unique sense of purpose. Our hope is that we can all learn from the journeys of our guests so that we can all better find a sense of purpose in our own lives. I'm host James Glover, performance coach and purpose nerd. I'm incredibly excited to be exploring these stories with you. So let's get going, shall we? Today's guest is Katie Mobed. Katie is one of the UK's leading performance psychologists, with over 20 years of experience helping individuals and teams thrive under pressure environments ranging from Olympic start lines to corporate boardrooms. A trusted advisor to Olympic champions, international teams and CEOs, Katie's work centers on unlocking human potential and building cultures of trust and purpose. In today's episode, we'll explore her insights on resilience and high performance and her passion for empowering people, young and old, to navigate life's challenges with confidence and clarity. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. All right, welcome, Katie, to the Excitable Soul podcast. Mega to have you with us today. I've been really excited, and it feels like it's kind of been a long time coming. We've had to kind of shift and change and maneuver dates and stuff, small things coming up, like having babies and stuff. So it's mega to have you with us. How you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Ever since you established the Excitable Soul, I've just thought it was this incredible name. It captures everything that I see in you and also feel a bit in myself. So yeah, absolutely. I'm honoured to be here.
Brilliant. We said that we would kind of start actually today with a bit of a kind of a different question for our normal kind of kickoff, which is you are somebody who has lived in the purpose space for a really long time and lived in it in terms of how you feel and experience your world and make sense of it, and also how you have helped others kind of go beyond the kind of the tactical, the pragmatic, the kind of the practical, what they do, into something that creates a different sense of meaning and connection. So you have this kind of beautiful sense of what purpose isn't, how it's experienced, how it's cultivated. And I kind of wanted to start with just a really big open question with you, which is just talk to us a little bit about your journey around that. Yeah.
By the way, I am so excited for this conversation and this topic. So if at any point I'm properly waffling, please jump in.
Oh, we love a waffle on this podcast.
Okay.
You are welcome to it.
Because I suppose initially, like, purpose, I think my way into it was like a sense of like, how random is life? Like, what are we doing here? What like what are we supposed to do with this life? We think we've just got this one life. Who knows what happens after it? But I've always had I don't really know where it came from, but like a strange sense of like, it's finite, right? We only have a set amount of time. You never know when it's up. And yet it feels like a massive privilege to be on planet Earth and to be a part of this planet Earth thing alongside other human beings and animals and everything else. Like, so part of it was like a very random, like, I'm so confused. What am I doing here? And what are we supposed to be doing? And are we supposed to just have fun? Or that just felt a little bit kind of vacuous, a little bit empty. It's like there must be some kind of purpose. And then I got confused by like, does everyone just have what, like, is there one thing I'm here on this planet to do that only I can do? Or is it my opportunity to look around and see where I find inspiration, where I find joy, and create that purpose? I still don't know the answer to that question, but it's fun to think about. So I think it was essentially a sense of the randomness of life and existence, and a desire to make it meaningful, because it feels too much of a privilege to not.
And what an important word already, like, to make it meaningful, because the kind of the devil's in the detail just around that, isn't it? Like, there is then, if you're going to make something meaningful, there's a need to become aware of some stuff. There's a need to actively and intentionally engage with some stuff. And then there's a need to pay attention to and learn about what that interaction kind of looks like. So what's that, before we kind of get into the magic of the work that you've created for others, like, what's that look like for you?
So in terms of how I make sense of my own purpose.
Yeah. And that kind of journey around meaningfulness.
and it's taken me a long time, and perhaps I'm still figuring it out in my 40s now. But the sense I've made of it so far is, I think for me, it kind of was crystallized, or something happened when I was much younger in the sport of gymnastics. It was like my first love, and I just was so passionate. I was literally like doing somersaults, backflips, splits was just the most fun thing ever. And so I started off with like a real sense of joy, but then not to be too like intense about it, it turned into quite a painful experience. And
Yeah.
so at one point I was training like 30 hours a week at the age of 12. I
Yeah.
had
Wow.
an increasingly difficult relationship with my coach. I've had a lot of fear. After a couple of injuries, I started to think about what could go wrong. And so I'd be standing on a beam about to do a particular acrobatic move, which I knew physically I could do, and my coach definitely knew I could do, and couldn't understand why I wasn't doing it, because I was standing there worrying about whether or not it was going to go okay. And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to process that barrier or the block that my mind was putting in place for me. And like it just got really it got really painful, really painful. I was probably in tears most days. I didn't really talk to anyone about it. I felt a deep sense of like that I was disappointing everyone, that I really liked that my coach just, there was no connection. Like I didn't feel that he understood what I was going through, and I didn't know how to communicate it.
Yeah.
And so there's like this misunderstanding. And when I eventually like retired, such a young age, I retired at the age of 16, having like traveled the world and on paper, like represented my country, been part of the national squad,
Yeah.
great things, but with very little joy in my heart. And when I retired, I don't actually remember this, to be quite frank, but my mum said that I said that one day I want to be there for others and have help them have a better experience in sport, and to keep the love and not turn it into suffering. Um, and I didn't realize at the time, because I felt like I want to help people achieve their dreams in sport, because I think can be pretty magical, not always, but can be, has the potential to be. And I felt like I needed to have achieved great things in order to help others. Like that I
Yeah.
needed to have, my dream was to go to the Olympic Games, win a gold medal, work out what had helped me do that, tell everyone else that, and then they can also do it. I was so naive, like so I guess innocent, very young in my thinking of like, oh, I'm gonna, create this roadmap. Here we go, everybody can have the best time ever. But and so I felt like, oh, this is a failure. Like I now can't do that. I have no like credibility. No one will trust me. I won't be able to make a difference. And then over the years and through experiences that we've shared and
Mm.
co-created together in a beautiful sport of canoe slalom, I guess I realized that I didn't need to have achieved the dream myself. That actually the fact that I didn't achieve the dream and the suffering that came from that was at the heart of my ability to like connect with others and give everything I could to their journey and their mission.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hoped initially it was going to come from a story of glory and triumph, but as I love that quote from the poet Rumi. He says, "The wound is the place where the light gets in," and so
Yes.
like that for me was having the courage after it took me like a decade. I think I first of all went off to uni for 10 years and didn't tell anyone that I was a former gymnast, that it was like I just hid from it, and then
Yeah.
eventually found the courage to realize and then like capitalize on it. So yeah, it was a
Yeah,
long
and
answer to a short question.
when you, I'm wondering, like, when you share that story and you say that out loud and you hear yourself say it, that I'm wondering what you connect with now,
Mm,
because there's just something really incredible about hearing you talk about the level of emotional awareness that you had at 12 years old, and what you're actually saying is, I knew it, I could feel it, but I just couldn't communicate it to somebody else that couldn't see or understand it. And I'm like, that's a magical thing at 12. And then
yeah,
also at the same time, it being another 4 years of that before turning around and going, no, I've had it, I'm done,
yeah,
that'll do, thanks very much. And how the kind of the internal experience was so rich and so real for you, at that age, that undoubtedly has been the kind of the innate human capacity that you have to create the impact that you do in your professional world now. And so there's a part of it where you can kind of flip the suffering and go, yes, that has helped me build a level of empathy and connection and generative experience with others. But there's another part of it which is, you were really remarkable, not just kind of physically talented, but in terms of your emotional maturity and awareness and insight. And I wonder if you see that in yourself when you kind of reflect on that journey.
Not, no, no. I think I still feel like I'm carrying like 12-year-old Katie with me and constantly trying to look after her. And like maybe that wound doesn't heal, but you just, that kind of Japanese kintsugi concept of when the bowl breaks and you reform it with gold and it's more precious.
Yeah.
So it's taken a lot of work to get to a point where I can talk about it and be proud of it almost. And not almost, yeah, I am proud of it. I'm proud that I tried. I'm proud that I tried to find the courage to communicate with my coach or stand up to him. And yeah, I think for forevermore, like I'm carrying that younger version with me and like just trying to look after her and constantly reassure her that
Yeah.
it's okay. And that's, yeah, I'm glad I have that insight because and you will know because you've walked alongside me through some of this journey and this growth of going from a place of like, I'm a failure, like the
Mm.
narrative of I'm a failure, I wasn't good enough, like I let everybody down. And then I noticed, like, I went through that period of, I went to university, I got 3 first class degrees, and I felt no joy about the whole thing because I was just trying to prove something, and I didn't, none of it actually really mattered. Like when I look back now, it's like the friendships, the fun, the
Mm.
hangovers, the experience at uni with friends is what I cherish, is what I take with me. And so, yeah, just I'm grateful to the people that have helped me reflect and helped me have the courage to like lean into that. Because I think back to that Rumi quote around the wound is the place where the light gets in, is most people, because the wound is sore, you
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it, you don't want to look at it, and so you miss the magic in it.
Yeah.
And I had some really fortunate people, like I was very fortunate to have some great people around me to help me do that so that I could transform it.
Yeah.
um so I would just be forever grateful for.
Amazing, amazing. And you've used the word joy like 3 times already, and we've been talking for like 5 minutes. And, so let's lean into the joy element of this now, and because working in elite sport and working with athletes, the joy can definitely be something that is acknowledged but secondary to the kind of
Yeah.
the need to perform and need to kind of deliver outcomes. So how do you maintain a level of connection to joy for you, but then also for those that you're working with in the kind of the most high pressure environments?
Yeah, it's a big one, isn't it? Especially like the narratives around sport, and in a sense that like not all gold medals are cherished, like not all champions are actually role models. Like for some, sport is like a lot of athletes are driven by dysfunction, like from early childhood wounds and so on. And over the years, I think I've just been figuring it out constantly, still figuring it out, that my mission is like, part of my mission is then to help people find the joy in their sport or to heal through sport. Actually, initially I went into it just with an intellectual question, almost like, could I help an athlete win an Olympic gold medal? And I realized that really wasn't the question at all. It's like, the joy comes from the moment of like real connection, like our work back in the day with Tim and Etienne in the sport of canoe slalom, two individuals that just like, I mean, I can't think about them without smiling. Like they're hard work. They were hard
Yeah.
work, but I flipping love them. Absolutely. And I still love them. And we still have a WhatsApp group with them and their coach, Nick. We still celebrate, like, what is it, however many years on, it's well over 10 years on from their gold medal winning performance at the London Olympics. We still celebrate that. Text each other on the day, we share inspiration. So I think that the joy for me comes in the connection and
Yeah.
helping an individual or an athlete to find their inner resources, to realize what they're capable of. And I remember I think it was Tim Bailey, he once said around about that time, like, we just went out there to do the very best we could, and it just so happened that our best was the best, and so we got given a gold medal. But that quote showed me how much he had like how much he'd reflected through his journey, that he'd gone from a very external, as I had as well, external source of success is medals and what people think of me, versus actually just loving my sport and getting in
Mm.
touch with more intrinsic drivers.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the question was, but I'm pretty sure I'm not answering
Well,
it. What was
let's
the question?
let's forget the question and let's kind of stay in where we're at, because there's something in that transition, right? There's something in that transition
Mm.
from kind of the external to the internal. And there will be people listening to this podcast who will basically be going, that's easier said than done.
Yeah,
And I guess we can acknowledge, easy is easier said than done, but it is possible. And so what are the
totally.
things that you have seen and that you do that enable people to truly value the internal experience as much as the external experience? Because that's the magic, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like when they
yeah.
truly value it.
And this is where, like, you'll know, like, I'm a bit of a psych geek, like a nose of it. Because I think for me, part of that, you've got to get a bit geeky into the neuroscience to understand how your mind works, because otherwise you're just being like driven crazy potentially by the thoughts that you have. And if you actually lean into the science of that, and I mean, I learned so much from mentoring from Steve Peters and other psychologists over the years around how the brain works, that we have over 100,000 thoughts per day, and roughly 70% of them will be of a more negative leaning, and potentially we're only actually in control of about 10% of those thoughts. So
Yeah.
starting to step back from the busyness of our mind and have an inquiring mindset around, like, what do I really think, like what's really important versus what is my mind telling me is important. And that's a massive step for
Yeah.
all of us because it's like, but hold on, it's my mind. I was with a group this week and we were talking about creating space between you and your mind, and one of the delegates in the room said, but doesn't that make me less human?
Hmm.
And I just wanted to grab him and go, no, it makes you more human. Like,
Yeah.
what is
Yeah.
it to be human? Like, he's like, but it's my mind, so it's all there, it's all true. It's like, what is it? And then there's loads of things you can do, obviously, in conversation or in psychology work, to help people relax their grip on the mind and how it works and thoughts. Because then if you've got that insight into how the brain has evolved and the different teams that might be up there or that are up there, then you can be a bit more discerning about which thoughts you want to pay attention to. You can't control the ones that come that might tell you need to win, or you need to get that promotion, or you need to be better than so and so, or what car are you driving, all these sorts of things. Then you can start to be a bit more discerning about actually how wise are those thoughts, or I'm not going to fight them or argue with them, but I'm just going to not engage with them. And then you've created some space. It's like, okay, so
Yeah.
if I'm not going to define myself by all those things, what am I going to define myself? Oh wow, like I've got a choice here, there's
Yeah.
some freedom here. And that's such a privilege to sit with people while they figure that out. That's blows my mind. Like almost 17 years in, and it blows my mind to hear people, to see people realize that, and hear where they want to go with it.
And in your experience, for you, Katie, as you've kind of been on this journey of external to internal and kind of navigating this both for yourself but as a practitioner, like how do you make sense of it? How are you kind of wrestling with the kind of the different voices and making choices associated with them? What are the things that have really worked for you in being able to do that?
Yeah. Well, for a start, it's ongoing. I have a coach now who's, that space is invaluable to hear myself think and reflect and all the rest of it. It's definitely been a journey from, like we've touched on, like the external of like I need to be an Olympic gold medal winning gymnast, and then I need to achieve the top grades in everything. Like I was never trying to beat others. I just was trying to be perfect. I think I was just trying to
Yeah.
always hit that standard. To kind of fulfill a sense of I'm not good enough as I am. Then the sort of learning about the neuroscience and how the brain works and understanding my earlier life experiences then shifts to more like I'm going to get my self-worth from following my values, from being in touch with my values and having them defined from a healthy place rather than a place of suffering.
Yeah.
I'm going to get my self-worth from like helping others, connecting to others, making a difference in the world. Tiny things like when I'm driving to school and dropping Isla off, I'm going to stop and let that person cross the road because it's raining, and like let them cross the road. They're cold and wet. Like trying to
Yeah.
connect with the community and people around. But where I aspire to for my clients or my friends and my children, my husband, is not even that. Is actually beyond where I'm at. Is more like an inherent sense of value of just how unique. Like everybody is beautifully unique. Like that. What are the chances of you being born as you
Yeah.
are today? Like it's just it is mind blowing. And like I look at my children and there's nothing they can do to make me love them anymore or less. Like it's just a given. And that's the first time really looking at them and kind of just a sense of wonder And then of course you're like, well, okay, so if that's true for them, then it must also be true for me. That wasn't automatically felt. I guess I just didn't have life experiences that kind of led me to that place, or
Yeah.
allow me to be in that place. But through Isla and Louis, I'm just like, oh my gosh, look at you guys. And
Yeah.
like, obviously they're incredibly annoying at times. Like, Isla, stop asking me for a snack, and like, yeah, it's like the driver's always like, are we nearly there yet? I'm like, oh my god, I do not have a sense of your wonder right now. But when I'm not in those moments, it's
You are
like,
wonderfully annoying in this
oh
moment.
my gosh. Yeah, it is. It's inherent, isn't it? And it's all. Like, a friend of mine was telling me recently about. This is a definite detour. Like the mushrooms. There's like a type of mushroom fungi that grows around trees. That's part of like a communication. I'm probably fudging this, but I need to look into it more. But it's a sense like that trees communicate with other trees through this particular type of fungi, and they're like maybe sending messages about like an insect attack, or they might be sharing nutrients if there's like the mother tree, the big one, and then there's the saplings that maybe haven't got the right sunlight, or they're so connected. And then you hear about like, I've been up a lot with Louis in the night watching David Attenborough, and he's like talking about like when a whale carcass sinks to the bottom of the ocean, then like the kind of, is it called phytoplankton, then feed
Yeah.
off it, and everything is so connected. And then you lose a sense of yourself. So you must go from like, God, I need to be really impressive and important, to, no, I'm just gonna try and be a good person, to actually almost like, I don't matter. But I don't mean that in a negative sense, but as in just that we're all here connected,
Yeah.
playing our part. So yeah, I don't know. I'm still processing it.
Well, what's really striking me is the kind of the almost the paradox of like colossal perspective. Like we are stardust. I
Yeah,
love Professor Brian Cox's. Just, we're all stardust. We're all made out of material that
love
is
that.
within our like universe, within our galaxy.
Yeah,
Because we can't be made out of anything else. There's nothing just special about this planet. There have just been
yeah,
certain conditions that have allowed that space dust to form and become other stuff. And so we're made out of the same stuff that you find on Mars or, like in the rings of Saturn or whatever. You're like, whoa, like the sense
yeah,
of scale associated with that. And then the wonder of our uniqueness, our individual uniqueness on the planet. Like that's kind of that's a big scale to be able to hold. And then at the same time you talk about the voices in your head and like the neuroscience associated with the kind of the structure and the function of the brain and how that interacts with your physiology and the interplay between those two things, and the output of that being some information that's being communicated to you like 100,000 times a day, and how much of that do you want or not, and the kind of the choices associated with it. So you can kind of go from this like universal to deeply tiny
yeah.
and kind of internal scale by this with this kind of meaning making experience. And I'm like imagining, if I'm listening to people on the podcast here, like how do you hold those two things at the same
I
time?
was
Like
thinking,
both,
what is this?
no,
What is this
like
conversation?
both are true, right? So how do you hold it? How do you hold it for yourself in a place where you can be in it and you can see it and you can accept it and you can embrace it, rather than being like, whoa, choof, I'm just gonna have a bag of crisps because that's all I can make sense of right now.
If you are going to, just please don't have ready salted. I just don't get the point of ready salted. It's so... Anyway, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah,
I
so
think you were building up to a poignant question, and we just talked about crisps.
well, I mean, I don't want to be a letdown, but that very rarely happens. I guess I'm kind of I'm more in this kind of observation of being able to hold the tension between these senses of scale. And one of the things that you talked about a little while ago was the kind of the meaning and the meaning making in the kind of the purpose process. Let's kind of bring it back to purpose as being maybe an anchor in being
Yeah,
able to hold that kind of scale and to be able to make sense of that scale. Like, where for you does purpose play? How does it enable people to make that shift from the external to the internal and really value it? How does it help people make sense of the world around them? Like,
yeah,
why is it a powerful vehicle from your perspective?
yeah. Uh, I'm sure you've got a very enlightened listenership. Is that a phrase? Audience?
Let's say yes. Yeah.
cool people that are maybe checking out your podcast. And so I'm imagining most of them have read, Bronnie Ware's book. I always thought it was Bonnie Ware, by the way, but I recently noticed it's Bronnie Ware. So
Okay.
apologies for misquoting her for about 15 years. Her book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And I love that. I actually, because I am a geek for the detail, and I love the subheading, which is A Life Transformed by the Departed. Because I think it does offer us a chance to transform our life while we're here on planet Earth. She talked about those top 5 regrets of the things that she noticed, recurring themes around people at the end of their life, and things they wish they'd done differently. And it makes me think about, I think it's Viktor Frankl's sense that you should live life as if you're doing it for the second time, and the first time you messed it all up. It's like, now it really is a gift. And so I think for me, like purpose, like it helps us make sense of all of that, and helps you kind of like I'm drawn to like this the times I've been in coaching conversations with incredibly successful, and I put them in quote marks deliberately, normally businessmen, who have an awful lot of money in the bank and a beautiful house and a very snazzy car, and not much in their soul. Like they have a sense of emptiness of like, is this all it is? Like there's no fulfillment to it. Perhaps the relationships they have with their partner or with their children not where they would want them to be, or maybe they haven't even invested in relationships. And so like purpose is a vehicle for peace then, because it's a vehicle for like having no regrets.
Yeah.
And actually coming to a point of accepting that our time is finite. Sorry to keep bringing that up, but accepting that it is, and then channeling that to think, okay, how do I make the most of today? How do I create joy, like we've been talking about? What do I really want to do with my time here? And so I've seen people make very drastic changes, very different paths. I've never actually read it, but it's on my bookshelf, the Second Mountain by David Brooks, where I think the premise is the first mountain is like where you try and like demonstrate worth and that you're very impressive, and it's like, I am doing this. And then the second mountain is more one of contribution.
Yeah.
And you can only go to that second mountain when you realize that you were enough as you are anyway, that you never really had anything to prove.
Yeah.
And then you can come from a point of peace internally. Now I can come back out to the world
Yeah.
and be in the world and contributing, but just with a different fuel. So purpose for me is like you said, a compass or an anchor, fuel, all these good things.
That language of purpose and peace. I don't even know what the kind of the interconnection was between the two of them, but purpose and peace. I'm kind of sitting with that, and your kind of referral to the finality of life. And we both lost a kind of a very, very valued colleague and friend. Like, you can't just really call him a colleague. He was so much more than that. And I don't know whether there's just something in that, because you and I haven't really had the chance to chat or connect in around Jörg, and whether or not that's just kind of playing out for us. Kind of the universe is speaking, because he was such a huge soul, such a huge character, and the kind of the warmth and generosity and just sheer strength of kind of spirit was phenomenal. But also he was kind of here and then not. And to be able to kind of acknowledge that is a possibility. And the importance of being here and seeing the kind of the contribution that's possible. Like, he will live in my heart forever. Forever. For to be somebody who spent so long in the kind of the elite performance environment, and yet brought such care and kindness and just generosity of heart. That the impact that he's had on people is going to live on forever. And there's something in that, isn't there, around I never asked him what his sense of purpose was, and like, I'm really wishing that I had, because I wonder how he would have described that in his magical Jörg fashion, to describe how he was in the world.
Yeah, totally. And think about the impact that one individual had on our lives. Like, I wouldn't potentially have met you without him. He put us together, and we met in that little kitchen in Lee Valley, and I just had this sense of like, oh my gosh, there's this guy with so much potential here in front of me. Wow, it's so exciting. And I mean, he gave me my first job in elite sport when I was so green. I didn't really have the qualifications. I definitely didn't have the experience, but he just like believed in me and supported me and gave me a chance, and forever grateful for that, and the people that I met through that, the experiences I had within his team. And just, and he won't, does he know that? Did he know the impact he had on all our lives? Did he know how much he opened life up for us? And then the same, then reflecting back on us, like, are we thinking about the impact we're having on other people and realizing what an opportunity we have to actually have a transformational impact? Because you kind of initially don't want to say that because it sounds a bit arrogant. It's like, oh, I don't want it to be about me. I want it to be about all these other people. But it's like, take responsibility for that. That Nelson Mandela quote, I think it's Mandela, you might be able to correct me, that we're not scared of the darkness, it's actually the light that we're scared of. Like, give ourselves permission to be all that we can be. That's not his quote, but that's kind of what I took from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if Jurg realizes, I don't know. I hope so.
It's the Marianne Williamson poem, right? It's the our greatest fear. Our greatest fear is not the darkness, but actually the light.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so there was just something around purpose and peace and this kind of sense of finality, and it just made me think of Jurg. And I think that there's something here in the kind of the description of contribution and the importance of contribution as well, which, for me, purpose is the outcome of some stuff. Like, people don't have to worry about being purposeful if they are paying attention to what's really meaningful to them and the contribution they're trying to make to it. So the opportunity is to go, what do I really care about? What are the things that really matter to me? And if that is joy and love and playfulness and all of those great things, then if those are really important and I can bring those to life, I can make a contribution to those happening for myself and for others. The outcome of that is feeling purposeful, like feeling fulfilled, feeling satisfied. And so there's a part of the kind of the sense making almost of how do you hold the scale of massive and minuscule, which is let go of it and to some degree just focus in, to your point, on the right kind of noise in your head, the right kind of voice in your head, and how that's speaking truth. And I don't say that in some kind of philosophical or spiritual comment that nobody can make sense of. It's genuinely finding the bits that are true for you and not some kind of emotive story that's driving behavior that's not helpful. But that requires work, it requires effort, it requires investment and engagement, and to your point, ongoing, because it can't stop, right? It's not done ever.
I love that, the sense you've just about purpose being an outcome almost, and that you can almost forget about it if you. I really like the way you frame that. I thought about it like that before.
Well, for me, that takes the pressure off. Like when I'm working with individuals or working with teams, like you can feel this sense of, do I have my shit together? Do I know what it's all about? Do I know?
Can I capture it in a nice sentence like Simon Sinek did?
Yeah, and you know what? There's power in being able to put words to it because of the kind of the ability to access it quickly. But it's so much more because it's emotional, it's feeling, and that is just rich, really rich, deep territory. And so anything that helps people like lower the threshold of resistance to being able to get back to, again, your point, what's more deeply human. Like creating distance and space in your brain is not less human, it's more human. Not paying attention to the voice in your mind and actually feeling your body, that's more human. That kind of differentiated data, the differentiated information, what are you paying attention to? And what then does that mean, and what does that make possible? Because that's the faith and belief element, right? Is I don't necessarily know what tomorrow is going to bring, but if I'm doing this stuff now, then I'm sure tomorrow is going to be okay.
Agree. But then I wonder how sometimes, like, when you're deeply passionate about this area, like how do you then also give yourself permission to not be purposeful, not be mindful of that, to just have some fun, just like superficial, like, and I don't know, like for me it might be like something really cheesy, like just flipping love fairy lights. Oh my gosh. Oh my god. Just my husband's like, what is the problem? Why are you so obsessed with fairy lights? There's just something
Another
about
Amazon delivery. Guess what we've got?
I was like, I saw a quote on Instagram about how like I've lost track of what even is being delivered now, especially when Louis was like up all night. I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah, that was a 3 a.m. purchase.
Yeah, it's like it's interesting how it all connects. How like the depth of meaning and purpose versus just the transient moment of just, I don't know, a hot water bottle and a hot chocolate.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that like? Well, let's explore that for a second, because I think there's something in it. It's certainly making me think, which is, like the principle of sense making. Like we're meaning making animals, right? We're trying to figure out and understand what's happening around us all of the time, and so I guess we have different ways of making sense of the different moments that we are in, and I think the idea of being purposeful all the time, or being laser focused on purpose all the time, sounds exhausting.
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me,
yeah,
if I'm honest. It has to be meaningful. It has
yeah,
to be important. It has to be
exactly.
significant. But I also think there's paradox here, which is purpose doesn't have to be massive and overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like to understand what is meaningful to you is to understand that fairy lights have meaning for you because they just bring a sense of joy
Yeah.
and playfulness and happiness in that. So that's meaneful, right?
Yeah,
Like,
that, like
yes,
my dad's allotment, like honestly, just did. Oh, he just, yeah, it's yeah, and it's like sometimes I heard someone once talk about it as like a seesaw of like purpose and pleasure. It's like some people are like really driven by purpose, and other people are much more driven by pleasure. And you have to every now and again, like a seesaw is only fun when it bounces both ways.
yeah,
And like now I'm thinking about how amount of times when I like attempt to get on the seesaw the other side with one of my children, it's like I did not have the leg strength for
yeah,
this.
yeah. Squat workout, yeah.
But yeah, I think like a little bit of that balance I think is important, like flipping it both ways.
And almost being able to, again, just kind of let go of it all and just be able to say, like, it doesn't have to be something that is front of mind all of the time, but actually when you need it, can you access it?
Yeah,
That
yeah,
and again, that comes back to, do I understand what's happening to me and for me in this moment? Do I understand that I'm in a place of peace and I feel comfortable and I feel happy, or that actually I feel lost right now, and in the lostness there's a need to be able to reconnect with something that feels like it has the kind of the structure and the scaffolding to kind of to help you go to the difficult places of figuring out what is happening and become unlost or unstuck.
yeah.
And so yeah, I think the kind of the freedom, like one of our previous guests, Sammy Burt, she's a purpose practitioner too, and she just said the most important thing for her was actually being able to let go of everything related to purpose completely, because she was so hell-bent on, I need to know exactly what it is, I need to know
Yeah.
exactly how it works, I need to be able to bring that to everybody else, and there is a rightness to this.
Yeah.
And then going, what am I doing? Like, it's too big, too massive, too individual, but
Yeah.
still real and still tangible and still hard-edged at the same time. And so you have to have freedom. I'm like doing wibbly arms just
I
in
like
case
it.
nobody can see that. I got all loosey goosey there for a second. You have to be able to play in
Yeah,
that, right?
definitely.
So I'm wondering about like the journey ahead, Katie. I'm like, how does purpose play a role in kind of leaps of faith in going forward into the future? What does that look like for you?
It's a good question, because when in thinking about values, like my two kind of guiding values are care and courage. Feel like if I keep channeling those, I won't go too far wrong. And so the leaps of faith immediately makes me think about courage. I think looking back, it's been in doing things that my mind was telling me I couldn't do. So whether it was even like taking that first job with canoe slalom, or moving into like rugby, a very male dominated sport of like I can't even catch a ball, like can't put me in this environment, and then actually having some incredible experiences and meeting some wonderful people. I remember our wedding, over half the guests were people that I met my husband through rugby, but that athletes and coaches that we'd worked with through that sport. So putting myself in environments where my head is telling me you can't do it. I'd say every job I've taken has been a leap of faith, of just deciding to disengage from the debate whether or not I'm good enough or can do it, and deciding to just trust the process of what can happen when you show up authentically for people and you put their best interests at heart. Oh my gosh, like I have so much belief in that and that process. So, but interestingly, the debate I'm having now is whether or not to leave the world of elite sport, having been in it for, I think it's almost 17 years. I don't feel old enough for that. I still feel like I'm in my 20s. Because there is it is a paradox in sport, isn't it? Because essentially you get employed to help people win. And yet as a practitioner in that environment, I care about that because it's fun to try and win and people like winning, but only if the journey towards winning is really like meaningful. Like you can't tell if someone has actually won by whether or not they're standing on a podium, because that's a much more inner journey. That's more like, Pippa Granger's concept of the deep win, or Kath Bishop's work around the long win. I love the way they conceptualize it. But like, how much did they grow along the way? Did they feel powered by purpose? Do they have aspects of their identity beyond that? So it's quite hard being in sport with that mindset, because it's not the norm. It's not what's expected of you either. You're not expected to be so holistic. So I think I've been effectively battling. And I feel like I've been winning that battle, and like there's loads of other people who are trying to kind of fight that cause as well, within the world of sport. But I do sometimes wonder, why don't you just go and put yourself in a different environment and see what's possible? I've done a lot of work in education, and I look at the education system and like I just don't know how teachers, what's expected of them is so unrealistic. And you're hearing more and more stories around exclusions and people like I didn't feel an overwhelming sense of excitement about my daughter starting school, and I sat with that for quite a while of like, okay, well, what are you doing about that? What if we could start from scratch in the education field and design schools that truly develop character and all the stuff we're talking about here? It would look so different to what it looks like now. And so I don't know, and I'm scared to say it out loud because now I'm like, oh God, I'm talking about it now. But like, I think there's another chapter for me coming where I invest and try and explore that space more and connect with other people that are trying to make a difference in, because kids spend so long at school. I actually worked out, I can't remember what it is now, but I sat and worked it out at one point how many hours. It's like way more than with family and so on. And so support to teachers, training for teachers, restructuring the curriculum, the physical environment of a school, all of that stuff. And it scares me because there's so much force against what's possible. There's so much like, this is the way it's always done, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's something in that. And then the other bit for me is like actually stepping back from all of this. And what I really want to do is just cook a great meal for my kids at the end of the day. And I want to like remember my friends' birthdays. So we were talking about that before we went on this podcast. And I want to like today's Louis' first birthday and tomorrow we're having a little party. And I want to make a party bag for the friends that have helped us through that, because it's been a hard year, various challenges. But like, I want to make little party bags. And like, these are the little things that like, if I just put all my time and energy into work, I don't have time to do those other things that actually I really, really care about. So there's like a leap of faith to walk away from the kind of work that has given me so much over the years and, help me support my family as well as all the more meaningful aspects we've been talking about. Yeah, those two things.
I love this kind of sense of massiveness and kind of like minusculeness too, like this sense of like scale and kind of and clarity of closeness, but actually both defined by what's meaningful to you around care and courage. Like the courage to go, that feels massive. It doesn't feel like anybody's necessarily cracking it right now. Like, how do I go and find other people that are trying to crack it, and us collectively do something that could go after that? In the same way that you went into sport, and it's really interesting listening to you talk about your kind of experiences when you started out at Canoe Slalom and kind of saying, oh, felt really, really green and didn't have the experience. Because the moment that we met in this kind of kitchen environment, I was really struck by what might be possible with somebody like you in that environment. And remember when we used to do the kind of the athlete reviews, and so there'd be all the coaches, all the practitioners sat around the table, and you would be the dissenting voice of like humanity towards these athletes in that room. And I was kind of like, she hustled everybody here. Like this idea that this is the kind of the first time that she's done this is a joke, because she's kind of taken it toe to toe with these really experienced practitioners and coaches who were really narrowly focused on some stuff, appropriately so, but to bring a different voice. So all it sounds like is you're looking to do exactly the same thing here, but maybe the scale is bigger and maybe the challenge is bigger, and that's because so are you. Like,
oh wow, I never thought of that.
Yeah, inside out. So are you. But then also like the beauty of the care element of it, which is, I just want to be able to cook a meal and make a party bag, and that is just as important as reforming the education system in the United Kingdom.
I remember, because I remember back in the day, there was one coach that said to me, like, basically didn't speak to me for 6 months. I was it was quite a male dominated staff team, as it often is, and he was like, I just needed to see whether you were trustworthy. I'm like, why did you, like, what a waste of time, like waiting 6 months for me to prove myself. Why don't you just get behind me from the beginning and wonder what more we could have achieved? I mean, and then I remember another coach saying to me that I could only talk to his athlete about canoeing. I was like, and yet things beyond canoeing are way more interfering of their potential than the actual strokes they take on and so on. And I no judgment, like, everyone's doing the best they can according to how they see the world, but things have definitely shifted in the world of sport to be more holistic. But I mean, Tim and Etienne, they know this. Somebody said to me, don't waste my time on them, they'll never achieve anything. It's like, they'll just become the first Olympic champions in the sport you watch. I mean, obviously none of us knew that, none of us knew what was possible, and their work and commitment was stratospheric, along with like Nick's coaching and all the rest of it, your role around them, like everything. Like, but it just shows, like, I think that's what is so amazing about it, is that you just never know what's possible.
Yes.
So give it a go. Like, what have you got to lose?
All right. I think, Katie, we should pause there, because what a sentiment to kind of leave this conversation on. Just give it a go, because you never know what is possible. Amen to that. If ever you wanted to listen to a podcast about possibility, or you wanted two people that could be more hopeful or optimistic about what the future may hold, often unrealistically so, but we have proven out many a time that where people might not feel like it's possible, it really is, and dreams can come true. That you've got two of us in the world, because I desperately stand behind. That's how we try to show up. And Katie was one of the biggest enablers of me just finding myself, especially in a world of work. The space that she created for me, along with Jörg, in that environment was the beginning of something that was truly remarkable for me, and I will be forever grateful. So thank you, Katie, not only for coming on the podcast, but for that and everything else on the journey so far. Thank you, and thanks for being the inspiration that you are. I like watching the way you grow, and I know the way you are with your kids and your beautiful wife. Like, it's magical. So thank you. Awesome. Have a wicked day. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Excitable Soul podcast. We appreciate your support and would love you to subscribe, rate, review, and recommend if you can. It makes a massive difference. Equally, if you're interested in uncovering, understanding, and unleashing your unique sense of purpose, or that of your teams, come and explore our purpose immersion programs at theexcitablesoul.com. We look forward to hearing from you there or being with you on our next episode. Have an incredible day.